So after the stock market crashed, the country fell into a depression caused by those cycles we talked about of banks failing and businesses going out of business, workers losing money. So talk a little bit about the Great Depression. The causes we've kind of gone over. The main one is this unstable economy, the unevenness of the wealth, the extreme amount of money this country had with all invested in the wealthy, very little amount of money given for the middle class and virtually nothing for the lower class. A product surplus and farmers and workers doing poorly. We've already gone over all that. Over speculation. Speculators are people who buy stock in the hopes that it does well. That's speculation. So speculators during this time were buying stock, and they used it as collateral to buy more stock. And when all those stocks failed, they were on the hook for a lot of money. Collateral is like something you put up a value, and if your loan can't get paid, you have to give up that item. So you could, used to back in the day, put your house up for collateral, your car up for collateral. Stock loans during the 1920s and early 30s went from $5 billion a year to $850 billion a year, and that $850 billion was wiped out, and all that money that was owed, all those loans that were owed, were unable to be paid for the most part. And again, government policies, too little money circulation, and because there was so little money in circulation, it did not help the economy to recover. If you put too much money in, it devalues or makes the money worth less. So you got to walk a very fine line with the amount of money that you have in circulation. Hoovervilles, as people lost their homes and their jobs during the Great Depression, Hoovervilles began to pop up. These were named after Herbert Hoover. This is one in Indianapolis, in fact. And these are towns made of dwellings that families and individuals lived in, and the dwellings were made out of scraps. Basically, it's a homeless village where they created little tiny homes for themselves. These kids say Hoover's Poor Farm and Tobacco Fund, give us some money. It says, hard times are still hoovering over us. Very clever young kids. A lot of people who didn't have jobs became drifters, and a lot of them rode the rails, caught trains to get from place to place, or to go from one area where something was being, where the farming was being done, to another area, especially when the crops came in. The prices of food fell, so low crop prices forced a lot of farmers to sell their homes, so more farms went out of business. And then another phenomena happened to couple the effects of the Great Depression. That is the Great Dust Bowl. Throughout 1931 and 1940, for almost 10 years, dust flew out of the Great Plains area, with the region we did on our map, for Unit 4. And this was a huge region, and those dust storms would get so big that sometimes the dust would end up across the Great Plains into the Midwest and even end up in New York and Boston. These dust storms were caused by a severe drought. What had happened is, before these areas were made into farming areas, there was prairie grass there, and the prairie grass protected the soil. Once the prairie grass was gone, the soil was sitting in the sun and baking. If you didn't rotate your crops, that soil became useless, and all the nutrients would be pulled out of it. So eventually, the dust storms caught all that topsoil and blew it, and they blew it far and wide, and it was horrible, which we can talk about it more in class if you want. In society, poverty generally equals illness. People who are too poor to see the doctor don't get any preventative care, and they get sick. And the only time they go see the doctor is when they can afford to at hospitals. And then the hospital visits sometimes are free, paid for by people who do have insurance. There are so few jobs. The competition for those jobs was relentless, which meant that you could, if you were someone who wanted to discriminate in your hiring policies, you could really discriminate. And this Great Depression hit African Americans particularly hard. Churches began to step in to help minorities. For most families, nothing was wasted. Soup lines would pop out all over the city. Here's one at the bottom right that says, for the unemployment, sandwiches and beers free. And then this one is free coffee and donuts for the unemployed. You can see the long, long lines in these city centers for these free items. All right, we're going to do 2 sections of this lecture. So this is the first.